Okay, everyone, welcome to the last and final class of this series, Cultivating Character, in which we are exploring selected Mishnahs, or selected teachings from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. And today we join the rest of the Jewish people around the world who are studying chapter 3 in this week. And so we started off with our first lesson 6 weeks ago. We started off with chapter 4, and now we continue chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 1, chapter 2, and now we're ending with chapter 3. Okay, so we're looking at Mishnah 7. Rabbi Lezer ish bar Teisa Eimer. Rabbi Lezer bar Teisa would say, "Tell him shalai she'ata v'shalach shalai. Give him what is his, for you and what is yours are his. V'chein b'David hu Eimer ki mimcha hakol u'miyadcha nasen alach." As King David writes, and as King David says, "For everything comes from you, and from your hand we have given to you." So we're going to unpack this at the basic level. This is a teaching about charity, and saying that the Jewish tradition of charity is very different than the typical way that people in the street think about charity. Typically, we think about charity as an act of kindness and generosity, that I have money that belongs to me, and I choose to be generous with my money to share to others. However, we know the famous teaching that the Hebrew for charity is tzedakah, and tzedakah means righteousness, means doing the right thing, doing the correct thing. If I'm a banker and one of my clients walks into the bank and demands $300 from his account, is that an act of generosity on my part that I gave him his money? Obviously not. The money belonged to him all along. And the same thing is the Jewish view on charity. God gave us money to hold and to act as a good steward of this money. And so when we are giving 10% of our money to charity, or 15% or 20%, or we see someone in need and we give from our money to take care of him, it's not an act of kindness. For as Rabbi Lezer told us, for what is his is for you. In other words, everything that a person has belongs to God. So, that's even this building block it may sound simple, but it's actually radical in the implications of how we view our charity. And there was a chassid who came to his Rebbe. The Rebbe sent him a letter requesting that he give 200 ruble to help someone who was in need. And this chassid was a good chassid. He used to give charity to different causes. He's quite generous, but the amount that his Rebbe asked for was quite exorbitant, and it was just a very financially inconvenient time for him to part with the money. So what happened was, slowly thereafter, he started losing all his money and became dead broke. So he came to his Rebbe. He said, for one time that I didn't listen to you, I deserve such a punishment. I deserve such ruin. So his Rebbe said, "What punishment? I don't understand what you're talking about." He says, "I used to be wealthy and now I became poor." He says, "You misunderstand. You were never wealthy. You always were holding on to money that didn't belong to you. It belonged to God. When God saw that you were using it in the way that was responsible and ethical and just, then God said, oh, this is a person I want to be watching my money. He uses it for the right purposes. As soon as God saw that you started looking at your money as your own, so then he took it away and he decided to give it to somebody else who's more deserving." Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hello. Fine. How are you?
I can't see you.
I know. Let me.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't worry. That's okay. You don't. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Okay. So that's the basic meaning. We Jews give charity because it's right, because the money doesn't belong to us. We are holding on to God's money to give, to put it in the right place. And sometimes the right place is feeding our families, and sometimes the right place is feeding somebody else's family. So that's the basic gist of this Mishnah. But as we've come to discover that the Mishnah Torah has many different layers. It's not just very deep, but actually you can unpack it in many different ways. And what gets to the bottom of why the commentary gives so much commentary on this Mishnah is the following statement. It says over here, give him what is his, for you and what is yours are his. Right? Give to God what is his, because you and what is yours are his. And the question is, these two words over here, for you, that doesn't seem to be, part of the argument here. In other words, what's the Rabbi Eliezer trying to make? What's he trying to point out to us when he says, give him what is his, because even you yourself belong to God? What's he coming to teach us here? Now, first of all, this Mishnah is not only teaching us about charity, it's also teaching about our general attitude about mitzvahs. Many mitzvahs come at a personal cost. So it comes time to celebrate Shabbat. Shabbat has cost to it. You have to buy Shabbat food, and you have to shut down your business. And what the Mishnah is saying, that money that you're going to earn from your business, that doesn't belong to you. Or the money that all money, it all belongs to God. So you have to make sure to use it in the right way. But another level here is the idea that God is telling us, it's almost like, children are, when they buy their father a gift for Father's Day. So they come home, hi Daddy, we bought you a $3,000 gift. Now, where did the $3,000 come from? It came from Dad. They went into Dad's wallet, they took his money, and they bought him a gift. The father loves that gift because he knows the money is his. He knows it's his. But it's the gesture of the children who made the effort to give him something, even though everything that they have really belongs to him, which creates kindness. And that's what God is saying to us. You and everything that you have belong to me, but I still appreciate when you give me from what is mine. Now, if you look over here, it says, if you look at what King David says, he says, for everything comes from you. In other words, King David's describing God, talking to God. Everything comes to you, O God, and from your hand we have given you. From your possessions we have given you. Now, it's from, one of the ways of reading from is in a quantitative amount. And some of what is in your hand we have given back to you. In other words, God does not require and demand that we give everything that he gives to us for us to give it right back. God says, be responsible with it, give some of it, a portion of it back to me, or into charity, or into mitzvahs, and some of it you're allowed to keep for your own personal benefit. So that's a beautiful thing, another way of seeing God's generosity. In other words, typically we see God's generous when he helps us win a lottery ticket. Now we're saying even the income that we earned, it really all belongs to God. We're taking from God's universe, from God's world, and we're giving it back to him. And God says, you don't have to give all of it back to me, even though it all belongs to me. Give me 10%. Give me 20%. The rest you keep for yourself. And that's an extra level of gratitude. We could contemplate, hey, God is, typically we put our money in a bank to get some interest on the savings account. And here it's reverse. God knows the more money he gives to us to watch, the less money he'll get back, so to speak. He'll get our mitzvahs, which is more precious than any dividends that God can have. Okay. So now we're going to look at this from a deeper level of what this Mishnah is coming to teach us. One of it's coming to teach us is that not only should we give our possessions, but we also should give from you. In other words, all our talents, our strength, our physical strength, our brain, our smarts, our talented singing voice, our artistry, whatever skills we have, our ability to negotiate and debate, whatever skills we have to recognize that those as well come from God. And we always have to be thinking, am I using it in a way that I think it belongs to me? And therefore, if I want to squander it, I could squander my abilities and talents. But if my talents really belong to God, and they're all from God, and he put it in my hands to nurture and protect and to watch and to guard, then I don't have that luxury to squander it away. It doesn't belong to me to squander it away. I have to maximize my talents to the best of my abilities. Now, there's another point of this teaching. Typically, the way we imagine our belongings is quite random. In other words, the fact that I have a specific make and model car, that's we tend to associate that's randomness. I need a car. That was the deal I found. Something appealed to me. I bought that car. The fact that I have 3 knives in the house and this broken doll that I bought in Israel 10 years ago, and all these random things, we tend to think that a lot of them are quite random. And if they weren't in my life, my life wouldn't be any different. But one of the ways of reading this Mishnah is, and it doesn't do justice in English, but in the Hebrew, is the recognition that what you have and who you are interconnected. It's not that you are who you are beyond all the stuff. And that's true. A human being is really not bound by stuff. But the fact that God gave him certain stuff in his possession, that means that he has to be a good guardian over these. And that's why we see many strange stories in the Talmud. Like, here's one example. There was a group of rabbis that went to I don't remember. I read the story a while ago, so I don't remember the names of the characters in the story. But they needed a blessing for rain, and they knew this certain rabbi, his blessings were quite effective. So they came to him, and when they came in, they saw he was busy working in the field. He said he didn't want to disturb him. When he was walking back home, he was walking amongst a road that had a lot of thorns and thistles, and he picked up the hem of his clothing and started walking through it, and he was getting cut by the thorns. And so when he got back home, they asked him, "That's so strange that you lifted up your clothing and allowed your feet to get hurt." So he said, "My feet heal, but my clothing, once it's torn, they don't automatically self-repair." In other words, we see that the rabbis were very careful of how they took care of their items. You know, our shared great-great-great-grandfather, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, it says that he was bringing his family across the Jordan back into Israel. And this was the night before he encounters his brother Esav, who Esav wanted to kill him for hundreds of years. And as he's crossing over the river on this, this precarious journey, he remembers that he forgot some small jugs on the other side of the Jordan. So he recrosses the whole Jordan in order to get the jugs. And that's why he was left alone and encountered the angel of Esav, and he had the whole battle and he wrestled till dawn. But he went back for a few small jugs. And that comes from the recognition that if God put these possessions into your hand, that means that there's some sparks that you have to elevate. And you cannot discard these items unless you maximize it for your potential. Or else your possessions cry out to you, why did you discard me and not use me for a mitzvah? My whole ability to get elevated to a higher level, says the clothing or the iPod or whatever we have next to us, says I can only get elevated through a human doing a mitzvah. I can't do mitzvahs. I have no free will. When a human uses me to do a mitzvah, or to sleep better, to have more energy to serve God, or to be healthier. So if you have exercise equipment and you didn't use it to serve God, the equipment says, hey, God put me in your possession for me to be utilized for the productive reasons. And so that's just a Jewish way of thinking about possessions. I know that there's a movement to throw out things that don't bring you joy. And there is some truth in that, but there's a level we have to start first, which is, first I have to do a mitzvah, maximize a mitzvah with everything that I belong. Anything that comes into my possession, I have to do a mitzvah with it. After I finished using it for its purpose, then maybe we could move on with it. Okay. The next thing is, the concept of ownership. There was once a Jew who felt it wasn't fair, a certain tax that the government was demanding from him, and he wanted to get out of it. And one of the policies of how you could get out of this tax is you swear that you don't have any possessions. See, he wrote to Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, who lived between 1150 and 1217, and he wrote to him, I plan to swear that I don't have any possessions, and even though I own possessions, but ultimately everything belongs to God. So I'm not really, it's true when I say nothing belongs to me, because everything belongs to God. And this is the argument he wanted to make. And Rabbi Yehuda Chassid wrote back, nice try, but it's theft. That's a clear false oath. Why? What's the reason? What's the logic? In other words, seemingly the petitioner who was writing his question to Rabbi Yehuda Chassid was making a valid point. Everything belongs to God. I don't own anything. But the truth is that God gave us possessions. When we have things in our possessions, God gives us the freedom of how we're going to use those possessions. So that's the deeper reading here. For you and what is yours. You, that means your freedom to choose how you're going to act with the things that belong to you. And that, in other words, everything belongs to God, but God gives certain people the authority to decide how that money will be used. So if Alex has $5,000, true, the $5,000 belong to God, but God granted it to Alex to be the custodian on how he's going to utilize that money. And now, if Jack came along and took some money from Alex, he's basically taking away the ability for Alex to exercise his choice on how to use the money. So you're not stealing the value, but you're stealing the ability for Alex to be the custodian in choosing how it should be used. Instead, Jack is taking control of it and deciding how it should be used. So, okay, this is the basic idea of the Mishnah. I don't want to spend time going any deeper into this Mishnah, but a lot of powerful insights here. Mainly, everything that we have is really ours to watch, we don't own it, we watch it. In return, God gives us great reward, but he also lets us use some of it. And this ability to exercise our choice on our possessions is a powerful concept. And our possessions are waiting for us to use it for the right purpose. So that's a summary of what we explained. Now I just want to go into Rabbi Eliezer Bar Tosa. When you're reading a lot of Mishnah from Pirkei Avot, you could think that it's a little random. Okay, this rabbi taught this saying and that rabbi taught that saying. But I'm going to read for you two stories of this Rabbi Eliezer, and you'll see from these stories that he actually lived what he taught. So some background. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yehuda of Bar Tosa He lived in the land of Israel in the beginning of the 2nd century. He was a student of Yeshua ben Hananiah. He was a contemporary of the famous Rabbi Akiva. And in the Talmud, it says the following story, that whenever the charity collectors came to collect in his city, they used to make sure to not go near him, because they knew that if he would spot them, he would come over to them and say, "What do you need?" And he'd give them everything he had to meet their goal. So let's say they say, "We're collecting money to marry off 2 orphans." He'd say, "How much does it cost?" 50,000. "Oh, I have 30,000." He'd give him all his possessions. So he lived a very poor lifestyle, because he literally lived that everything that I have doesn't really belong to me for my sake. It belongs to me to use for the best purpose. And right now, the best purpose is not my own personal needs, but the needs of these 2 orphans. So one day he was going to the market to purchase the wedding dowry for his daughter. When the collector of charity caught sight of him, they hid themselves from him. And so he ran after them and said to them, "I implore you, tell me on what mission you're engaged." So they replied, "We're raising funds for the marriage of 2 orphans." He said to them, "I swear, they must take precedence over my own daughter." And he took all the money that he had and he gave it to them. He was left with 1 zuz. And with this he bought some wheat and he put it in his granary. When his wife returned home, she asked her daughter, the daughter is the future bride, "What did your father bring home for your dowry? Let me see." So the girl didn't want to say outright. She said he put in the granary all that he had bought. So the wife went to open the door of the granary, and she found that it was full of wheat, and the wheat was protruding through the hinges of the door socket, and the door would not open on account of how much grain. In other words, God made a miracle that this few things of wheat now turned into enormous amounts. So the bride hears this. The bride was the witness of this miracle, because the bride saw there was only a few stalks of wheat that went in and so much went out. So she came to Daddy, "Daddy, you won't believe this. Come see what your friend," referring to God, "has done for you." So he said, "Now I have even more grain to do more mitzvahs." And right away, he dispersed all that grain to feed thousands of poor people in Israel. Okay, with this, we're going to end off our cultivating character lesson. In God willing, bli neder, we will start a new course, a three lesson course, probably Sunday, Tuesday, and the following Sunday. 3 lessons on finding contemporary wisdom from the Rebbe on how he approached deep personal struggles that are really connected to where the world is holding right now. So we're going to read 3 letters of his. Each lesson we're going to do 1 letter, and we're going to unpack the letter, and we'll see how meaningful those letters and how brilliant those letters were. Okay, have a wonderful day. Be well.